The Ontario election campaign came to a close last night when PC leader Doug Ford won another majority government. And of course, the other two big developments of the evening was that the leader of the NDP and the leader of the Liberals, Andrea Horwath and Stephen Del Duca, both announced their resignations. Joining me now to discuss what we should make of the election campaign that took place last night is Amanda Alvaro, who is a Liberal commentator. Melanie Paradis is a Conservative commentator, and Kim Wright is an NDP commentator. Amanda, I'll start out with you. The Liberal Party obviously was hoping to do better than they ultimately did last night. Their leader, Stephen Del Duca, announced his resignation, which was kind of a change in tone considering earlier in the day and the day before he had said that he was expecting that he would stay on as leader of the party. Where do Ontario Liberals go from here?
Well, like many parties who find themselves in this situation, I think that this is the beginning of what will be a pretty dramatic rebuilding effort, right? Because now we're into two back-to-back elections where the party did not get the result that it wanted, and certainly now has to take a look inside and say, what do we need to do differently to A, attract people to the party, B, really start to galvanize people around some of the issues that the Liberal Party has traditionally stood for, and maybe look at some issues that they haven't traditionally stood for. But certainly there needs to be a new approach. And I think that, we're about to look at some big leadership races over the next couple of months, or years potentially. So, for us political junkies, it's like the Super Bowl all over again.
And Melanie, one thing that a lot of people were saying about PC leader Doug Ford in the way that he approached the campaign is he kept kind of a low profile and kept quiet throughout the election campaign, not really doing any more media or press availabilities than he, would have had to have been expected to do, which ultimately seems like it was a strategy that worked because Ontario voters put their trust in him. But another thing is that voter turnout was the lowest that it's ever been. So I guess just what do you make of, the low voter turnout rate and the way that the PC leader approached the election campaign?
So I think that, Doug Ford's basically been ubiquitous in everyone's households for especially the past 2 years, in almost daily press conferences during COVID. It's not like anyone needed extra time to get to know him. So I don't think that the electorate really missed out much on whether or not he did additional interviews. I think that was fine in terms of strategy. Clearly it worked. But in terms of what was your other question? I've already forgotten.
Just in terms of like low voter turnout.
Low voter turnout. Thank you. Sorry. The low voter turnout. I actually think that this impacted the Liberals more than either the NDP or the Conservatives. I think that they largely stayed home, and that in part is why we've seen the numbers that we have for the Liberals.
And Kim, NDP leader Andrea Horwath, after her fourth election, decided to step down as leader of the NDP. Do you think that was a decision that she had to do or that she wanted to do?
I think it was both. Look, Andrea has left the party in so much better position than when she took the mantle from my former boss, Howard Hampton. But, she has grown the party. She has grown their donor base. She has those individual donors that New Democrats count on, as well as some of the larger donors. She has really spectacular candidates that had a really great ground game. And that's why you see that disparity between, the popular vote, and let's be honest, if popular vote mattered, Andrew Scheer would be prime minister, or Aaron O'Toole, or any of the other ones who talk about popular vote. But how do you translate that into seats? We don't have proportional representation. We first passed the post. This is the game. We can complain about the game. People want to complain about it. Fine. But Andrea had understood that. She understood, her and her team understood the ridings that we were targeting and micro-targeting, but it was also door to door, talking to neighbors, talking to community. And where you saw even places like Nipissing, where, Vic Fedeli won in a good manner, but our candidate there is now in that 28-ish% range, which if you had asked anybody on this panel 5 years ago, 10 years ago, would we be a strong second in Nipissing? They would have accused me of drinking some Kool-Aid. So here we are, and in a much better position with a very strong caucus, and frankly, the only opposition party that has official party status in the House. And those make big differences when you are trying to rebuild and get to that next level. There is no, is the NDP ready for prime time? We're ready. And here it comes.
And Kim, just before I go back to Amanda, just to follow up with you on that part, sources seem to be saying that the NDP will choose an interim leader shortly. What does the NDP need in an interim leader to be able to hold the party together until a permanent leader can be chosen?
Great question. Interim leaders are always a bit of a caretaker role. You want to have somebody who can manage caucus, but also what's happening within the legislature whenever it comes back. The premier has said that he is waiting, but last time around we were back into it pretty quickly. There's big legislative issues. There's a budget he wants to get passed, so you need to have somebody who can manage the House agenda. But also, there's a lot of new caucus members. There's also a disparate amount of caucus members in that it's just a really interesting time to manage that new caucus and get them together, get them cohesive, while battling a leadership campaign, which can be at the best of times, as we're seeing at the federal conservative level, a bit divisive. So how do these unfold? That's going to be the job of the interim leader, whoever they may end up being. And we'll know that we'll start to see who that interim leader or the proposed interim leader will be in fairly short order.
And Amanda, the Liberal Party seems to find themselves in a fairly similar place. It seems not super clear as of right now as to whether or not Stephen Del Duca will stay on until the permanent leader can be chosen, or whether or not the party will select an interim leader. But I guess sort of the same question that I gave to Kim, what does the Liberal Party need to do differently than they've done in this election and in 2018 in order to do what they want, which is win government in the next election?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at the numbers, there's a lot that needs to be done differently. And I think part of it will be like looking at the party operationally. What new ways can we attract new members to the party, maybe cutting fees and making sure that it's really easy and accessible to be part of the party. Then I think it's selecting a leader who can really galvanize the public. And that could be somebody who, really attracts a lot of media interest and is able to appeal to a broad range of Ontarians. And I think that, obviously that's job one when it comes to the leadership race, which, could be kicking off at any point. So that will be the first thing to do. But there's an operations role. And then I think it's really looking at what the party stands for and how to differentiate it for progressives and make sure that whatever we're putting in the window, whatever that is, that it's the kind of appealing policy that progressives have been waiting for. And obviously that hasn't been the case for the last two elections. So there's a ton to learn from. And I think that the party right now, from what I'm hearing, is very open to those learnings.
And Melanie, I mean, there was many issues that were talked about in this election campaign. Many people criticized the PC leader for not talking about certain issues. In regards to, he gave his press conference earlier this morning where he was asked about mandate letters, as well as the potential building of a new cabinet and when that may take place. What do you think the PC leader has to do in terms of building a cabinet, for example, that will ultimately earn trust with Ontario voters?
Well, the whole mandate here is to get it done. So there are a bunch of priority issues, getting highways built and other infrastructure going. He talked about the North again, about the Ring of Fire, getting that road built. And so I think that sets the stage for what his priorities are going to be in terms of building the new cabinet. I do think that it will happen sooner rather than later. There was some speculation today about whether he's going to do that before the summer break. I think having the summer to learn a new portfolio is really good for ministers. And certainly, as you said, for them to get their mandates from him. It's important for them to get, to hit the ground running. And so I think they'll probably make those decisions sooner rather than later, especially since we've got big portfolios like health right now. Christine Elliott did not run again. So she obviously needs to be replaced as the minister of that portfolio. So I think we'll see some interesting changes. There are also some new and exciting people who got elected who will likely get fun roles. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next. And then also we need to get the budget passed.
And then finally, just to you, Kim, what does the PC leader have to do again in building his cabinet and again on mandate letters? Because that's an issue that has kind of taken center stage even before the election started.
Yeah, there's still the court rulings about whether or not the last set of mandate letters will have to get released or not. So there's all sorts of the shenanigans around that. But he does need to likely move Minister Lecce out of education, especially with bargaining coming back up. I know it feels like we just had it, but there was that pesky pandemic in between. He also needs to reward Minister McNaughton, who has done yeoman's work on rehabilitating the relationship with some in the labor movement. There's, I think, a little too much that was made of some of the labor stuff. That was as much of a repudiation of the relationship with Stephen Del Duca and Pat Dillon and all of that. But, there's a lot to be done there. And in the first half of the last mandate, the Conservative government ripped up a lot of labor agreements, and the House of Labor was none too happy. And Monty, I will give him credit. He not only rehabilitated that, but what he also did, which was smart, was really showcase his young daughter, Annie, and how you could really showcase women in trades. And that, I don't care about your political stripe, showcasing women in trades is a huge shift in public policy and public perceptions. And I will give him all the applause in the world. Now, is there lots left to be done? Is there lots I'm going to finger wag at? Absolutely. Do they need to get the autism funding file working properly? Absolutely. Are there lots of things that were proposed in that budget, the unicorn in every pot budget, that needs to get fixed? Absolutely. But let's start with voters weren't wrong. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. As Ontarians, we want this all to be better. There's lots of time for finger wagging over the next 4 years.
Okay, Amanda, Alvaro, Melanie, Paradis, and Kim Wright, thanks to you all for your time tonight and for providing, again, some of your insight as to the results of the Ontario election last night.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Last night, Ontario Liberals from across the province gathered in Woodbridge, where Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca announced his intention to resign as leader of the party following the party winning 8 seats in the 2022 provincial election campaign. Joining me now to discuss the results of the Ontario Liberal Party is re-elected Ontario Liberal MPP in Ottawa South, John Fraser. John, thanks so much for making the time and good to chat with you once again. Perhaps we can just start out with the performance of the Ontario Liberals in the 2022 election last night. As I mentioned in the introduction, Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca gathered with supporters last night in Woodbridge. Where does the party go from here, and how can you move forward as a party with the results of last night?
Well, let me just say first that I'm proud of our party and the campaign that we've run, and I'm even more proud of Stephen and the campaign that he ran. And no one's worked harder to make sure that we were ready for this election, that our party was in good shape, that we had great candidates, that we had a great platform than Stephen. So, I think if we take a look at last night's election results, 8 seats is disappointing. But the vagaries of our electoral system, when you have kind of a freakishly low turnout, we got more votes than the NDP, but they have 4 times as many seats. So it's just how things shook out. And as a party, we have to take a look at the resources that we have and continue to work hard to build, continue to work hard to hold the government to account, to work with the government when we can work with the government, but to also oppose the government and propose when they're not doing the right thing.
And now, obviously, some of the next steps of the party will be to determine how long Stephen Del Duca will stay on as leader of the party, whether or not he'll wait until the party, chooses a permanent leader, or whether or not he'll ask for an interim leader of the party to step in. How do Ontario Liberals stay united amongst, the leadership race, whenever that may be?
Well, first off, I think it's up to Stephen how long he wants to stay. He's earned that by all his hard work. So, and I'm proud to have him having had him as our leader, and proud of the work that he's done. We just have to do the same thing that we did after the 2018 election, which is continue to build. Right. So to continue to attract more members, continue to attract good candidates, to focus on those things that are important to families. And as I said, work cooperatively with the government when we can, but also oppose and propose when the government isn't actually doing the things that families need.
The Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario and Doug Ford won its second majority mandate last night. The Liberal and NDP leaders both announced their resignation. The Green Party of Ontario re-elected its only MPP to the Ontario legislature in Mike Schreiner. There are many other ridings that the Green Party had hoped to pick up, but ultimately did not. Joining me now to discuss the results of the Green Party of Ontario is Abhijit Manet, who was the Green Party of Ontario candidate in Beaches East York and is also the deputy leader of the Green Party of Ontario. Abhijit, thanks so much for making the time. Let's just start out with the piece that I mentioned in the introduction. Obviously, there are a few ridings in which the Green Party had obviously hoped to pick up, Paradis, Muskoka. There was also University Rosedale and your riding in Beaches East York as well. Where does the Green Party go from here in terms of ensuring that in future elections they can try to win some of those ridings?
Yeah, so I mean, Paradis Muskoka was so close, right? Like it was about 5%, and that is just so heartbreaking because Matt Richter and his team put in so much hard work into that riding, and Matt is exactly who Paradis Muskoka needs because he's such a caring and such a incredibly articulate advocate for his community. So I really feel like we came really close, and we had to really make sure that we put in all our resources and all our efforts into making sure that Paradis Muskoka got over the top. Unfortunately, we fell short, but this is like, I think with it just shows 40% of the vote is what Matt Richter got, and it just shows how much momentum there is in Northern Ontario and rural Ontario for the Greens, but also the vote shares that we got in University Rosedale, in Beaches East York, and all the other ridings. So many of our ridings have doubled it or tripled our vote. In Beaches East York, we in the last election had about 4.6% of the vote. We went to 10.2, so more than doubled it. In my own riding, I'll tell you, like in the last election, there were 41 sign requests, and this time we had 550. So it just shows you there's like incredible growth happening across the province. What I think really challenges the growth of the Green Party is our unfair first past the post electoral system, which is really also corrosive for democracy in general, right? Like one of the lowest voter turnouts in all of Ontario history. And I think you can attribute that to first past the post because it is such a disenfranchising and disempowering electoral system. So what we need to do is definitely change our electoral system, but the only way we can do that is get more Greens in there. So it's a bit of a catch-22, but I think we can definitely still do it. And Green success that you see in first past the post is testament to the fact that we're even breaking down the barriers of this already entrenched unfair system.